Welcome back to Andersen Acres. Today we're going to talk about keeping your yeast breads both fresh and flavorful. Breads can become moldy or stale soon after baking simply because if you're home making your bread, you're not using a bunch of preservatives. That's why the bread from the stores lasts so long, is it's full of preservatives. So because we're not adding preservatives to our bread, it's fresh, it's homemade, it's delicious, so it'll also go bad faster. Proper storage is essential for preserving the freshness and flavor of your breads. So the first thing to know is you want to cool your bread completely before you store it. So these are now completely cool. If I'm going to be eating them within 3 days, I can just put them in a plastic bag or a container. You want it to be as airtight as possible. So you put them in the bag, you squeeze out all the air, twist the end, you're fine. You can tuck it underneath if you like. You can use a twist tie, you can use a bread tie, doesn't matter. That is fine for up to 3 days. Up to 5 days for some breads, but at least 3 days. So what do you do if you need to store it for longer? Okay, so this is good for up to 5 days. You're fine. After that, you're going to have a problem because your bread could start to mold, could start to go stale. So you're going to need to do something else. Do not put it in the fridge. I see a lot of people putting their bread in the fridge. That sucks the moisture right out and causes it to dry out. Okay? So don't put it in the fridge. If you can't eat it within 5 days or 3 days, depending, if you're in a more humid location, you might have to watch for mold after day 3. But okay, so if you can't consume it within those 3 days, now I have no problem consuming mine within 3 days, but let's say you have a problem. You can't put it in the fridge. Instead, we're going to freeze it. The proper way to freeze it is, one, make sure it's completely cool. Okay, you do not want it to be warm at all, or you're going to end up with gummy, unusable bread. Okay, the next thing we need, a piece of cling wrap, plastic wrap of some kind. Okay, just a piece of plastic wrap, no big deal. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap these, and we're going to start, we can probably do 2 in a size this big. Okay, you could go longer, but I only have the 2 out here. So you just take your plastic wrap it tight. Okay, wrap it tight. Okay, nice, there we go. Stick the other one. You notice I'm doing them alternating. So one is face down, one is face up. And then you wrap it tight, nice and tight. Nice and tight. And then you do your edges. Nice and tight. So we're going to store this for longer term storage. I often have to do this when I'm at the holidays and I need to make my bread stay good longer. There we go. So now, there we go. Our bread is wrapped. That's not good enough. Now we're going to take our bag that we were using, put them in here. Get as much air out of that as you can. Remember, you wrapped those tightly, so there's no air in there. Then you squeeze the air out of the bag. Now again, you can either twist tie, tuck it underneath, it doesn't matter. I would secure this because you're talking longer term storage than 3 or 5 days. Okay, so that's ready. But now what do you do with it? What you do is you put it in the freezer. Okay? This goes in the freezer. If you have a deep freeze, that's what we call the big chest freezers that are significantly cooler than your freezer that comes in your fridge. So the freezer attached to your fridge is not as cold. It doesn't freeze them as deep. So if you have a deep freeze, this goes in the deep freeze. If you have just your regular freezer, it's still fine. You can store them for up to 1 month in your fridge freezer. If they're in the deep freeze, they last up to 3 months. So you can do this to preserve the freshness of your bread. If you think you're going to do that, do it right away. So if I'm making a bunch of these small loaves for Christmas or for another holiday, and I need about 20 of them, I bake them and then I freeze them immediately. To defrost these, you simply bring them out of the freezer, don't touch them. Bring them out of the freezer and let them sit for about 5 to 6 hours until they've defrosted completely on their own. Don't try to use the microwave, just let them sit. That will preserve the freshness of your bread for as long as humanly possible. If you do end up with stale bread, You can use it for croutons or breadcrumbs. Still, preserving it so that you can eat it later is the best way to do it. So if you can, absolutely preserve your bread. You can freeze it. Just remember, keep it out of the fridge. That just dries it out. You want to maintain the freshness, maintain the moisture in your breads. That's about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. We will come back tomorrow probably, and I think we're going to make hot dog buns because somebody asked. See you tomorrow.